Welcome to the Music Travel Guy YouTube channel. My name is Michael Piardi, and in today's video, we are diving deep into the art of how to collaborate with other artists and musicians. Joining me for this exciting podcast interview is Alexander Flood. Alexander is one of Australia's most innovative and versatile, multifaceted artists, blending new jazz, deep house, broken beat, D&B, funk, and experimental sounds into something entirely his own. In 2020, just a few years after graduating at the top of his jazz program, he signed with the US record label Stretch Music, dropping his debut album Heartbeat, followed by The Space in Between in 2022, which is a wonderful album and actually my very first connection to Alexander's music. That album wasn't just about music, it was about connection, featuring an all-star lineup of artists like Christian Scott and Vivian Sessoms, just to mention a few. And that brings us to today's conversation. In this episode, Alexander breaks down exactly what it takes to collaborate as an artist, what he looks for in a creative collaboration, how to build your own artistic community, and the key ingredients to making meaningful music together. Plus, we get into the evolution of contemporary jazz music and a sneak peek at his new album, Artifactual Rhythm. So now, without further delay, let's jump right in. Beginnings. And one of the things I discovered from you is this: the Dave Wacko band was one of your biggest influences at a young age. So
Yeah.
I'm a little bit curious about that. So aside from this band and of course the band leader Dave, what other artists or sounds, let's say, shaped your love for making music, for being a drummer, and expressing yourself through music?
I grew up not in a musical family as such. My grandfather was a piano player, but that's not the reason I started playing music. Before I started learning music, or specifically learning drums, I was sort of exposed to a lot of ABBA and a lot of other artists, but specifically ABBA is sort of a core memory of my childhood, because my parents would listen to a lot of it, and on road trips, car trips, holidays, things like that, it would always be ABBA. So this kind of produced dance tempo, disco, pop, synth kind of sound world was already there early on. Bee Gees as well. Bee Gees and ABBA were the two core kind of artists that I was hearing as a young kid. And when I started learning music, like taking formal drum lessons, one-on-one drum lessons, initially there wasn't really a focus on music as a greater subject. It was specifically drum kit playing and skills at the drum set. So the music side of things didn't really start to develop until a few years later. My second drum teacher, when I was 10 years old, one day he asked me what sort of music I like to listen to, and at that age I didn't really listen to music. I was passively hearing it, but I wasn't really exposed to heaps of it at home, and it wasn't something that I did as a hobby or as an interest. I didn't think about it. I played a lot of sport, I practiced drums, but I wasn't sitting down and listening. So he thought, all right, well, I'm going to give you some recommendations. So the following week he came to the lesson, or I came to his lesson with a USB. And he gave me the USB, and it had about 200 songs on it. And the songs were things that he thought I should listen to. And what I remember being on it was just like the Dave Weckl Band, John McLaughlin, some Mahavishnu Orchestra, I think, some John Cleary and the Monster Gentlemen, these sorts of like funk, fusion, a lot of 70s stuff, but also more modern, jazz, sort of all jazz,
Jazz. Yeah, yeah.
jazz fusion funk kind of sounds. And immediately there was just this like this fire inside that was like, this is so inspiring, this is so interesting to hear. And I maybe I didn't, sure, I didn't fully understand it at that point, but it sort of evoked a feeling of, interest and stimulation, and I want to learn more, I want more of this, I want to hear more. So I would just listen to those 200 songs. I got a little iPod shuffle, and I would just listen to those 200 songs on repeat. And for, I'd say, a year or two, that's all I was listening to. And then I'd go on YouTube and discover more. And so that kind of opened up the big rabbit hole of music, the greater, context of everything around that. So then at that point I started playing in some of the school ensembles and being exposed to a lot of different, like, orchestral music, concert band music, big band music, cover band stuff, and it sort of grew from there. But I think that was a pretty pivotal moment, around that time of being given that USB, and just feeling so inspired and discovering something completely new that I've never heard before. I've never been exposed to before. It was so exciting, and I feel like I still kind of have that excitement nowadays to discover new music, to kind of give me that same feeling of excitement around new stuff, new sounds, new
Beautiful.
artists, new records. So that was a really important time for me, and that really shaped, I think, my next steps after that in
Of
sort of
course.
going deeper with jazz and fusion music and things like that.
It's very interesting. You said, um, so you mentioned these two adjectives which were interesting and exciting. So, what did make it interesting listening to jazz music at the time, at that young age?
Hmm. My brain doesn't. It's not that I don't like listening to a singer. I love working with singers, recording with singers, writing with singers. But instrumental music has always spoken to me differently because my brain doesn't absorb lyrics when I'm listening. I don't remember the lyrics.
Yeah.
I can listen to the lyrics, but they're not something that really become internalized. So the instrumental music, which I think, mostly that USB that I was given was mostly instrumental music. It kind of felt a little more direct, like I was only hearing what was normally underneath the singer. Now I was hearing everything there, present, being featured, and it kind of allowed me to hear things. This is my 10-year-old brain. Hear things a little clearer and make sense of things easier. There was less in the way, less
Mm.
distraction. But also, the music that I was listening to, this music was all quite dense, quite busy, a lot of kind of medium or faster tempo music. And I think even to this day, that sort of those sorts of tempos and those sorts of densities, rhythmic density, that really, does something in my brain, really stimulates my brain. So yeah, I guess that the interest was also there because the music was so dense and rhythmically complex, I guess, funky, groovy. Um, yeah, I'd always kind of be looking out for the next, really funky sounding So when I discovered Stevie Wonder, it was like, oh, this is some of the funkiest. And then when I discovered like a little later on, like the band Lettuce and the band Snarky Puppy, um, these sorts of bands were really stimulating that kind of funk, searching for the funk kind of feeling. So
Lots of bands you were listening to at the time.
yeah, lots of bands. I mean, yeah, I get so much out of I got so much out of listening, and I still get so much out of listening, so much learning, so much. I think so much of my writing is um, influenced by what I'm listening to at that time, and I sort of go through phases of different sorts of things, and yeah, it's a really valuable tool is to listen.
Absolutely.
Obviously, that goes without saying as a musician, but
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, you are a band leader, so it's part of the inspiration you want to get out of. So
mhm,
the
sure, yeah,
accessibility, yeah, complexity, and also accessibility to your ears. So I
hmm
mean, it's a personal thing, of course.
hmm yeah,
And jazz music, Alexander, is also part of your graduation. So it's also part of your knowledge in terms of. I mean, you spent 3 years studying jazz music at university, right?
yeah. That's it. Yeah, here in Adelaide, 3 years at the conservatorium studying jazz,
Studying
jazz
jazz music,
performance.
which is
Yeah.
one part of your um, personality. So, which is one part of your artistry, and on the other
hmm
side, it's you blending, experimenting. So, for example, at the beginning, you mentioned your early influences. Listen to ABBA, for example, and
hmm
when you said that, I immediately thought about the electronic dance music elements you, for example, have in your creation. So
hmm
it's you, your love for jazz music, um, but it's also as I said, experimenting, blending, adding contemporary elements to the way you express your creativity. So speaking about jazz, how do you see this genre evolving in the next 5 or 10 years? And also, especially with the digital collaboration, happening
hmm
right now, and also the rise of genre blurring music. So how do you see that?
Yeah. I kind of see it as it's a tree, and I guess it always has been a tree, but it's growing branches and then extensions of branches and extensions. So I mean, I don't. My guess is that things will uh, continue to evolve, continue to grow and change, and people will always search for innovation, and people will always have a hunger for something new, something fresh, something different, something that challenges people's expectations, or you know, something that challenges what people are familiar with or what people know. So I think that's really exciting, and I think that's definitely something I'm. I mean, if you listen to to the 4 albums, I'm about to put out the fourth, but if you listen to the 4 albums that I have or will release, they're all very different. But I think in that trajectory, that the sound has gradually refined more and more to where it currently sits. So in a way, the evolution of the sound has slowed down,
Mm.
as in it's changing less drastically because it's going deeper into one, I guess, more specific sound. Um, and I think that also happens. So as well as the tree, things growing outwards, I think as we find new things out there, we can also go inwards in those spaces, going deeper into the whatever it is, newer sounds, newer concepts, which is also, yeah, really exciting. It's sort of, I still think there's, especially taking influence from electronic music, I think there's still so much that can be done, especially thinking about the tech side of things. I mean, I'm not super hip to the artificial intelligence or that side of things at this point, but using the technology, instruments, sequences, computers, all this sort of complex music technology, using that to create things that haven't been possible or haven't been isn't possible with human hands or
Yeah.
things like this. I think incorporating those elements or those technologies into maybe more of a live, creative jazz uh, situation, I think also opens up, a lot of new possibilities. Um, so yeah, I have hope. I'm hopeful that things will always be evolving, and I think humans will always uh, search for change and search for the next thing and the next thing, and um, yeah, I think that's a really good thing to have with music and art is constant evolution and new ideas, new thoughts, collaborations, things like this.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what does constant evolution mean to you in terms of blending jazz music with what's happening now in terms of new technology, artificial intelligence, which is a very hot topic for
Hmm.
day one artists and musicians. So, what's your recipe? So, what would you suggest to an independent artist who is trying to find his way
Mm,
to really understand how to take advantage of uh, these new technologies? Why
mm,
staying true to themselves?
yeah, I think it's probably one of the first steps would be trying to identify some goals. Because if we just think, oh, what can I do? There's infinite. There's no um, yeah, there's no parameters, it's just infinite.
Yeah.
So I think it's having goals. So for me, for example, okay, I've just created and released this new album that was a reflection of where I was at 12 months ago, and where my head was at with writing and sound and things like that. Now I might be working on the next record. I don't want it to be the same as the previous, and so I'll early on in that process I will try and determine like what are some things about the previous record that I feel like I really nailed, things that help me get closer to whatever I'm trying to do with music, with my life, um, and then what are the things that maybe don't need to be done in the same way, or I shouldn't do in the same way, or so you're sort of working out almost a recipe of, or at least in my case, this is how I have kind of moved things forward, working out uh, how you want to approach the next thing. So it
Mm.
could be the next goal. It doesn't have to be a recording project, but kind of identifying what those goals are and then looking at, okay, how can I get there? What tools might be accessible, and how are they going to help me, or what can they do for me to reach those goals? A very simple example, and you know,
Yeah.
it's very old technology, but a very simple example. I just bought a Fender Rhodes 6 months ago because I'm always writing for Rhodes, and I think it's a sound that's so I just love the sound and feel of a Rhodes. But writing so much Rhodes, or a lot of Rhodes parts on the computer using like a VST software keyboard, like a software Rhodes, using a cheap MIDI keyboard, it just didn't really fulfill that the feeling. Even though the end point is someone else will be playing the parts on a Rhodes, I'm not the keyboard player. It's all fine, but the actual process of writing I found was slowed down because the tech that I was
Mm,
working with was
yeah.
was not quite fulfilling the feeling. It was it was fulfilling it was doing its job. It sounded like a piano, and
Yeah, of course.
I could write chords, but having my hands on a real Rhodes has really changed my writing, um, and sped things up actually. There's less instant feedback in terms of if I play a chord on my MIDI controller, my computer tells me exactly what that chord is. Okay, I can tweak this, or what if I change this note? I record that. Oh no, change this. The Rhodes is doesn't have any. There's no tech. It's a guitar essentially. It just has an output and a volume
100%. Yeah,
knob.
yeah.
So it means that I'm not thinking as much and I'm listening more. So it's almost dumbed things down in a sense, but I have to be a little more switched on to really find what I'm looking for. So yeah, that I guess that's a simple example, but that's been something that's been quite pivotal for me recently, this year or last year. And yeah, I guess you can find ways of um, reaching your goals through people or tech or uh, study or anything. You just have to be able to identify those things, which is
Yeah.
sometimes the challenging part.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what's one question, for example, for you, Alexander, that really helps you understand, or that really helps you take the first step in defining uh, your goals? What's one? Because, for example, you mentioned a question, at the beginning. So, is there another question that really helps you, go through the process of setting, the right goals for your music creations?
That's a good question. I don't feel like I have a black and white answer, or even an answer that's been the same every time. I think the nature of the evolution of the music is the processes in getting to the destination or working towards the goal sort of change each time.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, I mean, for me specifically, a question that has been a lot more present in making the past release Oscillate as well as the upcoming release Artifactual Rhythm. The question, one of the questions anyway, there's a million questions, but one of the questions was, how do I make the music in a way, or how do I present the music on a record that is still like playable and replicatable live?
Mm,
Because I don't know if listening to The Space Between or Heartbeat, a lot of that music is was not really created in the mind with the mindset of let's play this live like it sounds on the recording, or let's do these arrangements in the same way. Some of it does work, and then some of it is just a lot more tailored to the record than to the stage. So we're obviously trying to play shows, tour, um, travel around, and we all love gigging. So of course we want to be able to play all the music. So that's been a question in the last few records of how do we make the music in the studio, but make sure it's all very playable, not from a ability standpoint or technical, but some things just don't work live, and I kind of wanted everything to work. So yeah, it's really been that's been a question that's always on my mind now with my
Yeah,
writing, and I've already I'm sort of in the middle of finishing writing the next album after the one that's about to come out. So that's been very you know, very commonly on my mind recently in the last 2 months.
that's a very
It's sort of
challenging question at the same
yeah,
time
it
to
is, yeah,
understand your, yeah, but specific at the same time, I
for
can
sure.
say.
Yeah. Yeah, and you need to get specific. You need to know. It is hard to pinpoint certain things with setting goals, or and people can be afraid of goals or afraid of thinking too far in the future, fear of failure, or just I don't know what I'm doing in 12 months' time, but I should probably still set some goals so that when I get halfway there, I'm not guessing, or I'm not making things like I have a plan. But it can be daunting to, yeah, plan for the future, I guess, as a musician, especially.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of courage. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you need to sit down with yourself, understanding what you want to create, the direction you want to take. But I think it's a process, as you said, and you know, it feels like every time you discover more about how um, you want to create at that, you know, specific moment, because this is going to be your fourth you know,
Mm-hmm.
album, and I feel that it's going to be something different than, for example, Space in Between.
Mm-hmm.
um
Mm-hmm.
and I think those questions are really important. So every time you take a moment to stop and maybe say to yourself, okay, what do I want to focus on this time? Or the question you mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Space in Between,
Mm-hmm.
I that was my first connection to you, Alexander.
Right.
And as I said at the beginning before starting the conversation,
Yeah. Yeah.
I I loved watching the documentary as well, and um, a lot of collaborations. And this is something that I wanted to talk with
Mm-hmm.
you, because I believe and I feel collaborations is one of the challenges DIY artists and musicians face nowadays. So they um, so picking the right people to work with deals with a lot of, you know, difficulties, things to figure out. And you've teamed up with a lot of talented artists and musicians, you know, thinking about the Space in Between, but also
Mm-hmm.
thinking about your first collaborations and upcoming album, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one beautiful passage I loved while watching the documentary, which is this: you were like, so from right from the start you knew that that project would only come to light through collaboration. So
Mm-hmm.
it sounded like that you really care about this part of you making music. So um, for example, when you kick off a new project, what's the first thing you look for in a collaboration, in a potential collaborator? And also, aside from technical skills, um, what's piquing your interest?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess
What's important
um
to you?
yeah, yeah, yeah. In choosing a collaborator for it might be a recording, it might be a show. Um, there's not necessarily just one process or thought pattern that goes through my mind, because I guess it depends on a couple of things. Like a lot of the collaborations, especially the upcoming record, but as well as the space between, a lot of the collaborations were, and maybe less so the featured artists, but the band and additional parts, additional artists collaborating with these people is often because there's already a lot of trust. I already know the people. We have good friendships or relationships. I know what they're about and their abilities, and you know, and know that they will represent the music well, or suit the sound or the style. They will understand the intention. So sometimes, or a lot of the time, I guess it is simply finding the right suitable people that are in my circle, or people that I trust and that trust me, and that we have a good professional and personal, relationship with. And then on the other hand, uh, oftentimes the collaborators have come across or come in on my radar, so to speak, by chance, and from that point have maybe fostered a relationship, with that person, or we've discussed together, like we've had a collaborative conversation about collaborating. So sometimes from the start, it's already like a two-way street. So I recall my meeting Zayn Mohammed, or being connected with Zayn Mohammed, who played the oud
Yeah,
on
they're good. Yeah.
what's the track title on The Space Between? Contra on The Space Between.
Yes.
I believe he actually, out of the blue, he messaged me one day on like Facebook Messenger. I hadn't come across his work before, and he messaged me, and he'd maybe had a he'd been speaking to another friend, and they'd mentioned me, or someone had sent him my music, and then we got chatting, and quickly it was like apparent that we should make some music together. So I already had been writing some new music, and I sent him a demo of something. And at that time, I was really exploring. This is for the Space Between album. Really exploring some pretty contrasting sounds from around the world. Sounds from West Africa. Sounds from North Africa and the Middle East.
Yes.
Southeast Asia. So part of that was also finding the right people, either in my circle, or reaching out to other people to find out who, hey, do you know any guzheng players, or do you know any sitar players, or because often, I don't have all the tools in my in my toolkit. I don't know all the people, and so often there's collaboration in finding the right collaborator.
Of course.
So a lot of people have also come across come into my circle through other people. So Abashe, for example, Sabi, before, while I was planning the trip over to record Oscillate in Berlin, I had a bass player locked and loaded. Sabi was keen. I've wanted to work with Sabi. I had at the time wanted to work with Sabi for years. Loved his music. He was, one of my favorite artists to listen to, and we had chatted online. So anyway, he was keen. We were ready to go, but I needed a flute player, and he he had some recommendations, and that's how I was connected with Paulo. Which what a special connection that was. Like he had a recommendation, and then all of a sudden Paolo rocks up to the session, and he sounds so great on those tunes. And then we did touring together, and then I went back the following year, and Paolo and I got together again, and he joined me for some shows. So often it's been a case of finding connections through other people and not being afraid to ask other people.
Good
Because,
point.
I might have 10 friends, and one of those friends has 10 other friends, and one of those friends has 10 other friends, or 100 other friends. And then all of a sudden you know half of Germany, or so. Yeah, that's something that I have learned along the way, is to never be afraid to ask people questions or ask for advice, or um, maybe that's an Australian thing, being a little more uh, closed off, not closed off, being a little more sort of reserved. But I think I've learned to be more outgoing with asking questions, and asking for advice. Um, and that's sort of really what happened with collaborating with Christian Scott Atunde Ajua. He really did become quite a pivotal mentor for me, and he was someone that I could and still can fire a million questions at, and have great conversations with, which in doing so has taught me so much about the recording industry, releasing music, working with labels, distribution processes, royalty collection processes, all these kind of technical music industry things that you don't learn at school. You don't, yeah, you either pick them up, or you have a mentor who can sort of
Yeah.
help you through those hurdles, and sort of hopefully help you bypass some of the hurdles as well. So, and that's what, Christian Scott really became like a mentor for me. And then, of course, over the time that we were sort of that over the time that friendship was developing, then we recorded that track together on The Space Between as well. So that sort of came out of the friendship, right? We had already had a few years of um, rapport, and then it was sort of a case of, this makes sense. Let's make this track together, rather than you know cold calling someone, which is absolutely valid. I've also done that with collaborators, not knowing
Yes.
them, just sending a message or an email. Hey, would you like to do this? I really like your stuff. And they say yes, and then great. And then you've got a new collaborator. But sometimes it is like that as well. So it can happen a million different ways. Um, I guess it's just first identifying who it is you think will fit or suit the brief, or who you feel aligns with what you're looking for
Yes.
in
Yes.
the music.
Yes. 100%, Alexander. And um, so you said friendship, of course, but one thing that really stood out to me was when you mentioned at the beginning the word trust. Trust is, everything. And I mean, I see building trust as a continuum back and forth.
Hmm.
So it's a long journey, and I think it's also love and caring, in action. I'm there for you, and you are there for
Hmm.
me. So it's like it's a back and forth of give and return.
100%.
If you were to, for example, um, yeah, what's what's the best way for you to start building trust with someone you would love to collaborate with? So if you were to speak to, for example, an independent artist trying to build his own, creative community, how can this person um, start, building a sense of trust with another person she or he would like to collaborate with. So what's the
Mhm.
the right starting point for you?
Um, I'm really big on communication and uh, communicating effectively and professionally and quickly. I think there's a lot. There's a lot of, certainly in my experience, there's a lot of people in this industry, and I'm sure every other industry, but this is all I'm exposed to in is the music industry. Um, like people that just suck at communication or are slow or don't reply and I think that's a maybe not for everyone, but for me that's a big turnoff and a big it already gives me a sense of I mean people are busy and people have lives and children and all sorts of things that happen day to day. I can sympathize with that, but sometimes I do get a sense of if the communication isn't always there, or uh, if it's difficult, then it doesn't feel like it often to me will not feel like a professional collaboration will work. Um, and I think in through communicating, just the simple act of, and it could be a phone call, it could be a message, but having well communicated ideas and thoughts and questions
Yeah.
and I think that does build trust early on. Um, Maybe more so reliability. If you know someone's reliable, or you trust that they're reliable, they're organized, they're on top of their stuff. Um, I think it's easier to sit back and sort of um, I mean, trust, rely. You can rely that they'll be consistent. They'll be there.
Yes.
They'll show up. They'll pull their weight or put in the work that's required. So I think for me, communication is always on my mind, and I really try to be a good communicator. And I um, some of the best friendships and some of the best relationships with people that I have are people that um, are good communicators, people that I can can trust to, um, you know, to acknowledge or absorb the information I'm trying to get across. But at the same time, if I'm trying to ask questions or get some information that I can trust will be able to provide that. Um, Especially if things are timely, if there's a deadline or if there's so yeah, I think that would be one big point is trying to establish some good communication with the people, but yeah, I guess like if let's say someone's remote, so like you and I, we're not in the same city, we can't catch up, and
Yeah, that's
but
what I wanted to ask you as well. Yeah.
yeah, like um, uh, remotely collaborating, remotely talking with people, I think is harder, um, but in some ways easier because you don't have another option. So maybe people are more likely to
Yes.
be more communicative digitally or on their phones because they know, oh, well, I'm not going to see, you know, I'm not going to see that guy on Friday at the gig. So like I'll have to message him now. I'll have to get back to him now. I can't wait till Friday. Um, yeah, I think, I mean, I think it's a tricky thing to just um, have a blanket rule because everybody's different. And I would say, yeah, communication is is very important for that, building trust.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. What does communicating effectively mean to you, Alexander? So, for example, so if I think about the space in between of being collaborating with your own band, which is
Hmm.
based in Adelaide, in Australia, but also
Hmm.
you had collaborations with people coming from different countries. So, um, what was um, the process of creating an ongoing communications with people who were not based in your
Hmm.
own country, look like for you? So what was the experience in terms of communicating effectively and
Yeah,
trying to build solid and effective collaborations?
I think being well prepared, first of all, knowing what you want. Um, maybe we don't always know what we want. Maybe that's why we're collaborating. We want to give someone full control, or we want someone else's take, and we don't want to give any, I don't know, indicators or predetermined expectations. But often I think having a, having a clear intention of how you want them to be involved, and then having a very um, trying to do things quickly. I don't think rushing is the right. That's not the right way of looking at it. But I think if things get left on the back burner, if we sort of uh, talk about doing something, and then I send you a demo, and then leave it at that. If we don't maintain, I think the momentum, it can die off, and people forget, and then it never gets done, and then it's 3 months later, and then uh, the project can just really be stretched out, and
Yeah.
maybe people will lose interest along the way or lose motivation. So I always uh, yeah, I like to keep things moving at a productive pace, and I like to see, well, experience progress quickly with myself, with collaborators, with creating music, doing things. Um, so yeah, keeping on top of things, but also just being, if someone's asking me for a demo of something, if I am able to give it to them right then and there, I will do that. Like, I get a message tonight from someone, hey, can you send me that track you mentioned? And I've got it on my Google Drive. I know I can access it from my phone. I'm going to do it. If I'm in a position to do so, I'm going to do it right now. So it's out of mind. I don't need to write it down. I don't need to try and remember it. It's done. They've got it straight away while they were on it, while they were thinking about it, while they were maybe ready to work on it. Um, and then it's tennis. The ball is in their court now. I've done my piece of that kind of
Your homework. Yeah.
interaction. Uh, and I find it easier to manage tasks when I can do that, when I can play tennis and get the ball back over into someone else's court, so that I'm freeing up time, but also
Time.
space
Yeah.
in my brain and on my to-do list. Um, so yeah, timely, being relatively um, efficient with the timeline of a project, I think makes a big difference to the productivity and to the motivation, to the excitement, to the freshness as well. I mean, if we're doing something creative, um, the longer we sit with something, sometimes can start to the um, wash the initial, I don't know, concept, or the initial spark. It can sort of dilute things, and especially through the mixing phase of an album, you're listening to that same, mix revision 1, mix revision 2, mix revision 3, and then it starts to kind of all become a little harder to discern after that, because you've heard something so many times. It's kind of sometimes washed away the shininess of it. And I think that's just a part of making music. But um, yeah, I think being efficient with the timeline of a project. It helps to maintain that a little better and keep things a little more exciting for people.
Yeah, you're right. Especially the last thing you said now. So it gives you, the excitement because, as a musician, a drama composer, band leader, you're a creator. You want to create. So the more you get into that um, zone, the
Mm.
more you can experience that excitement, within yourself, and probably you see more possibilities in creating different things and so forth, like a
Hmm.
circle.
Yeah,
um,
for sure.
I would say, yeah,
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, it's very very helpful, I think, for people listening to this the conversation, Alexandra. So I'm very grateful for that. Before we finish up,
Hmm.
um, I want to ask you two things. So the first one is what people can expect from your upcoming album.
Hmm.
So yeah, tell us a little bit more about that. So the direction, the vision you had,
Yeah,
and also of course the music.
yeah. For just quickly for people watching the video, uh, if you're listening, I'm sorry, but for the people watching, something that arrived in Australia, well, something that arrived to my place today in the mail is the new record, uh, which is super
Yes,
exciting. This is yeah, it only came a few
very
hours ago, but
fascinating, the album cover. Yeah.
um, yeah, the new record is here, and the music I'm incredibly excited by still because um, like we just talked about, the process was I mean it was when did we record it? January 2024. So it has been more than a year. But the music was finished by like finished, totally mixed, completely done, committed to by like May 2024, which is a yeah kept things exciting. And then I've kind of left it on the I've tried to not listen to it too much, so it still retains that sort of shiny feeling. But um, what my goal was with this album and the sound of it and stylistically the music was really to uh, go a little deeper than say what Oscillate or how Oscillate sounded and its style. Go a little deeper into the electronic side of things,
Yeah.
but still very much approaching it from a uh, or through the lens of a live band. So it is all recorded live still in the same way that Oscillate was, four people in the studio playing live together with that kind of energy, that somewhat spontaneity, and there's improvisation, but it's very much drawing on. It's going a little deeper with its influences and actually the styles that it's recreating, re-evaluating. So there's like a UK garage track in there. There's a kind of classic 90s sounding house track. There's
Exciting.
yeah, kind of some more experimental drum and bass stuff, some down tempo stuff, some broken beat stuff, but um it's all kind of mixed in with this jazzy kind of live um aesthetic. Yeah, this vibe, and it is all very structured. It is all very pieced together, brick by brick. But it's live music, and that's the way we want it to come across. And when we play it live, because of the way we made the record, we can play the tunes live in the way that they essentially the way they sound on the record. So that's super exciting as well for us when we get to play the music. um but yeah, I wanted also this music to be a little more accessible. in, more vocal tracks and a little deeper in the house kind of
Mm,
sound. And I think that opens up, yeah, a lot more scope for DJs playing the tracks out
it is.
in
Yeah.
clubs and for dance floors and radio play and things like that. So yeah, I guess it's a little less experimental and a little more straightforward. Four to the floor kick drum
Fall to the floor kick drum.
for
Yeah.
the DJ. But yeah, it's super super exciting, and I hope people enjoy it as much as we enjoyed making it.
Yeah. Also, I think you're opening up a window to all dance music lovers to your sound, to also what
Yeah, I hope so.
contemporary jazz is all about.
For
No
sure. Yeah,
boundaries,
yeah.
and yeah, which I think is so wonderful. Opportunity for everyone, not only to explore your way of expressing yourself through music, but also to again what jazz music is all about: freedom.
Mm, freedom, exactly. Yeah,
That's
that's
right.
it. And there's yeah, like there's a lot of um, when I write the music and bring it to the studio, there's a lot that's predetermined in terms of maybe the structure, or here's the
Yes.
bass line, here's the skeleton bass line, or here's these elements. But then uh, if I wanted everything to sound exactly the way that I wrote it, or if I wanted everything to sound exactly the way that I could make it sound by myself, then I would just do it that way. I would save money. I would probably save time. I'd, save having to make the charts forever. But uh, I want people to bring the collaborators, for example, the musicians on the record, to be able to bring their own sounds and their own unique interpretations of
Lovely.
things
Yeah.
and their background, their influences into the music, and choosing people based on that as well. People who have a history or experience with this kind of music. Um, so yeah, there is a lot of freedom in it, which I think keeps it exciting for everyone. Hopefully the band is excited to play the music.
Yes. Yes. I'm sure. I'm sure. I haven't got the chance to listen to the first single you released, right?
Hmm.
You released now. Okay.
Life is a
I
rhythm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
put out a second single a few
The
weeks
second
ago.
single.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Now I have more reasons, and of course I'm looking forward to listen to
Hmm.
the whole album, Alexandra.
Yeah, for sure. Next Friday, it's out
Next
April
Friday.
4th
Next Friday.
at Jazz Record Company. Yeah.
Amazing. Fantastic.
Hmm.
Last thing, I
Yeah.
want to make sure we want to make sure. So now I'm thinking about those we're listening to this conversation. We can get the best out of you from your experience, creative journey. So my question is this. So I love. So I want to finish this wonderful conversation. Thank you for that, Alexandra. With this question for you, which
Mm.
is this: if you were starting out as an independent artist today, so imagine yourself starting
I
out.
still feel like I'm starting out as an
You're still
artist.
okay,
This is just
great.
the beginning.
So okay, wonderful. Um, what would be your top priority? So what would be the most important thing for you to focus on?
Ooh, interesting. That's a very uh, I think that's a very important point, but it's not something I've actually put a whole lot of thought into from that perspective. Um, what's the most important thing? I think building good relationships with people, with musicians, with uh, music industry people, radios like local radio, um, local venues, getting to know the people, and building bridges with people that are going to be essential at some stage in your world. Um,
Why is
I think
important for you, Alexander?
because I can't do everything myself. Sometimes I wish I could, but I really have I really do rely on and have to have a lot of trust and faith and um for other people around me and the people that I'm you know uh trying to work with or find work through or collaborate with or um I think this industry doesn't work. Uh, you need many hands to make something work. It doesn't work with one person. Um, there's many stages to putting out an album, or many stages to booking a show, many stages to putting on a production, or uh, you know, I think you really need to lean into um, other people sometimes and find the right people that will be able to help you to get to where you're going. And that might start with, you know, a family member being, you know, giving you some advice. Having
Yes.
people to, it doesn't always have to be literal, you know, oh, I need a piano player or I need someone to mix this out or I need a venue to play. It might be someone that has experience in this industry or a family member who has experience managing their money or you know, any one of million things, people that you can learn from, work with, uh, people that can help you, people that you can help, building relationships to then, you know, step by step grow a career. Because I think, yeah, people are what make music what it is and make music possible as a career. Let's hope that artificial intelligence doesn't kill all the jobs in in music. Um, yeah, but yeah, I think building those relationships is going to be really important early on, and just being a part of a music scene, a music community, knowing other musicians who are trying to do what you're doing, and you can, you know, grow together, collaborate together, gig together, share music ideas, share, you know, here's a new album I found, you should check it out. Um, I think community and people are really what you need to grow.